£90 at the checkout, or 3 payments of 30. No interest, no paperwork, one tap. Split into 3, and the trainers, the coat, the birthday present suddenly feel almost free. That button is now at practically every online checkout in Britain, and it is the single most frictionless way to borrow money ever invented. And that is exactly the problem, because it does not feel like borrowing, it feels like paying, and the gap between those two feelings has quietly become one of the fastest growing debt machines in the country. Here is how fast this happened. In 2017, the UK buy now pay later market was worth around £60 million. By 2024, it had passed £13 billion. Roughly 1 in 5 UK adults, nearly 11 million people, used it in a single year. And with the cost of living squeezing budgets, more than a third of users say they have leaned on it repeatedly precisely because everything else got more expensive, which means the borrowing grew fastest, exactly where the money was already tightest. That is not a niche payment quirk anymore. That is a parallel credit system that grew 200 times over in 7 years, aimed squarely at clothes, tech, and everyday spending. And for most of that time, it operated with almost none of the rules that apply to a credit card. If you're worried about how easy borrowing has quietly become for you or for your kids, subscribe. I make this simple every day, one number at a time. Let's be precise about the trap, because it is psychological before it is financial. A £200 basket does not cost £200 anymore. It costs £50 today. The other £150 belongs to a version of you who exists next month, and the month after, and the month after that. Behavioral researchers call it payment splitting, and it works on the same wiring as every installment scheme in history. The pain of paying shrinks when the number shrinks, even though the debt does not. One split payment is genuinely manageable. The system does not fail at one. It fails at the cluster. £30 to one app, 25 to another, 40 to a third, each one trivial, each one invisible to the others, until payday arrives and a queue of small automatic collections lands on the same debit card in the same week. Debt Charity Step Change has reported clients arriving with more than 30 separate buy now pay later agreements running at once. Not one loan, 30. Citizens Advice described the whole model in one line: like quicksand, easy to slip into and very difficult to get out of. Watch how the numbers actually move in a real month. Say there are 4 live plans: £43 to one app, £30 to another, £25 and £50 elsewhere. Individually, pocket money. Together, £148, leaving the account in 1 week, committed weeks ago by 4 separate past versions of you who never consulted each other. If the account is £60 short that week, it is not one small problem. It is up to 4 separate failed collections, 4 potential late fees, and a bank account pushed into its overdraft by purchases that each felt at the time too small to think about. And the costs, when they arrive, do not look like interest. They look like consequences: miss a payment, and many providers charge late fees that stack per missed installment per order. The repayment usually comes off a debit card automatically, which means a failed collection can tip your current account into an overdraft, where the borrowing you were told was free suddenly costs you overdraft rates through the back door. And the newest change is the one almost nobody using these apps has clocked. The major providers now report to credit reference agencies. That casual split payment on a hoodie is visible to the mortgage lender assessing you next year. A missed one sits on your file, telling every future lender a story about you over a purchase you barely remember making. Ask the obvious question: who is this actually happening to? The answer is uncomfortable. Usage is heaviest among younger adults, and among people already under financial pressure, the exact groups least able to absorb the shock when the cluster lands. Citizens Advice found that over half of young people who use these services in a year had struggled to make a repayment. And because there were no proper affordability checks for most of this market's life, someone already drowning could keep opening new agreements, app after app, with each provider having no idea the others existed. The frictionless design was not an accident. Every check removed, every form deleted, every second saved at checkout was a decision, because friction is where second thoughts live, and second thoughts are terrible for sales. Now, the genuinely important update and the reason this video exists this week. On the 15th of July 2026, 2 days ago, the rules changed. Buy now, pay later is now formally regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, the same watchdog that oversees credit cards and loans. That means, for the first time, mandatory affordability checks before you are lent to, clearer information on what you owe, when, and what happens if you miss. Proper support if you fall into difficulty instead of just an escalating fee schedule, and the right to take complaints to the Financial Ombudsman Service, an independent referee, if a provider treats you badly. Roughly 11 million users just gained protections they never had. This is genuinely good news, and it is worth saying so plainly. But there are 2 catches worth knowing before anyone relaxes. First, the new rules only cover agreements opened from the 15th of July onward. Every plan opened before that date sits outside the new protections entirely. If you are currently juggling old agreements, they are still governed by the old rules of the wild years. Second, and more importantly, regulation makes the lending fairer. It does not make the purchase affordable. An affordability check can stop the most reckless lending at the extremes, but no regulator can check whether you actually needed the 3rd pair of trainers. The cluster problem, 5 small payments quietly assembling themselves into one large one, survives regulation completely intact because it is built out of individually sensible decisions. So here is the honest position, because this channel does not sell fairy tales in either direction. Use deliberately a split payment on a planned purchase, budgeted like the bill it genuinely is, costs nothing, and smooths your cash flow. That is a real benefit, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. The danger was never one payment. The danger is the design, a borrowing product engineered to feel like a payment method, placed at the exact moment of maximum temptation, priced at 0 on the label, and paid for in late fees, overdrafts, credit files, and the slow normalization of owing money for clothes. The practical version takes 5 minutes. Open every Pay Later app you have ever used and count the live agreements, because the number is often higher than people guess. Add up the total owed across all of them. One number on one screen, the way the apps themselves will never show you. Put every repayment date into your calendar so payday stops being an ambush, and adopt one rule from now on. If you would not buy it outright at full price, do not split it, because the split does not make it cheaper, it only makes it quieter. £90 or 3 payments of 30. Same money, same trainers. The only thing the button changes is how clearly you feel it, and the entire business model lives inside that difference. Feel your spending clearly, and the most sophisticated checkout psychology in the world has nothing left to work with. If you learned something from this video, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.